The night the millionaire fell to his knees on a frozen New York sidewalk, the city kept moving as if nothing extraordinary was happening, taxis splashing through dirty snow, strangers walking past without slowing down, and neon lights blinking above a moment that would change two broken lives forever. A man who owned glass towers and private jets pressed his palms into the cold concrete, his expensive coat darkened with slush, his pride stripped away, while a homeless woman stood in front of him holding a torn blanket like armor. When he begged her to marry him, it wasn't desperation for love that shocked the world later, but the impossible conditions she placed on his heart that night. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the most damaged lives can still be redeemed, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. Her name was Grace Thompson, though most people passing by the bus terminal only saw another invisible figure curled near a steam grate. She had once been a nurse in Ohio, a woman who believed in steady routines, Sunday mornings, and the quiet dignity of helping others heal. Life did not destroy her all at once. It chipped away slowly after her husband, Michael, died in a factory accident, after medical bills drained their savings, after her job disappeared during hospital cuts, and after depression took what little strength she had left. Grace drifted east chasing work, then warmth, then survival, until New York became both her prison and her shelter. Every day she learned how to disappear so she wouldn't be hurt again. Jonathan Miller lived in a world built on control. As a self-made real estate tycoon, he believed discipline could solve anything. He owned luxury apartments overlooking Central Park, funded charities for tax benefits, and appeared in magazines that praised his discipline and vision. Yet behind the polished image was a man hollowed out by guilt. Years earlier, his construction company had rushed a project to meet deadlines, ignoring safety warnings. A worker died. Jonathan settled the case quietly, wrote a large check, and moved on publicly, but privately the weight followed him everywhere. No amount of money could buy silence from his conscience. Their lives collided because Jonathan started walking the city at night, unable to sleep, haunted by memories of a man who never came home. He noticed Grace because she didn't ask for money. She sat still, watching people pass, her eyes sharp with awareness but tired with pain. Over weeks, he began leaving food nearby without speaking, returning later to see it gone. Something about her quiet dignity unsettled him more than the loud desperation he was used to ignoring. One winter evening, Jonathan sat on a bench across from her, overwhelmed by a strange urge to confess his failures to someone who had nothing left to take from him. Grace listened without interruption, her face calm, her posture guarded. He returned again and again, bringing meals, blankets, and eventually himself, stripped of titles and expectations. In her presence, he felt human again, not powerful, not admired, just seen. Jonathan mistook that feeling for love at first. It was deeper than attraction, rooted in his hunger for forgiveness. He believed if someone like Grace could accept him, perhaps he could accept himself. That night, under a sky heavy with snow, he begged her to marry him, promising homes, security, warmth, and a future free from pain. Grace did not laugh. She did not cry. She simply told him her conditions, and each one felt heavier than the last. She would not marry him until he gave up control of his company to create real worker protections, not symbolic donations. She demanded he publicly admit his past mistakes instead of hiding behind lawyers. She required him to live without wealth for 1 full year, no assistants, no drivers, no private homes, to understand the fragility of life he had never truly faced. And most shocking of all, she insisted the marriage wait until she rebuilt her own life alone, without his money, without his rescue. Jonathan felt exposed and angry, then ashamed. No boardroom negotiation had ever demanded this kind of surrender. Yet something in Grace's eyes told him she would rather remain homeless than become a trophy for his redemption. She wasn't asking for luxury. She was demanding truth. The months that followed unraveled Jonathan's identity. Headlines exploded when he stepped down temporarily, announcing reforms and taking responsibility for past negligence. Investors panicked. Friends disappeared. He rented a small apartment in Queens, learned to cook, took the subway, and stood in lines he had never noticed before. Every day stripped away another layer of arrogance, replacing it with humility and frustration. Meanwhile, Grace entered a women's shelter, found work at a community clinic, and attended therapy to confront the grief she had buried beneath survival. She refused his financial help, accepting only encouragement. They met occasionally in public parks, speaking little, letting silence do the work of healing. Jonathan learned patience. Grace learned trust. Neither knew if love would survive the distance, but both were changing in ways that felt irreversible. A year later, Jonathan stood in a small church in Brooklyn, no cameras, no luxury, just quiet wooden benches and soft light. Grace walked in wearing a simple dress she had bought herself, her posture strong, her eyes clear. They had rebuilt themselves separately, and now they chose each other freely, not as savior and victim, but as equals who had faced the truth. Near the end of this story, if it touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in redemption, and subscribe for more stories that remind us love is earned through action, not promises. Just before we close, leave a comment telling us whether you believe real change requires sacrifice, because your words might inspire someone else to choose a better path. As they left the church hand in hand, New York continued its noise and chaos, but for once, two souls had learned that love is not about rescue or power. It is about meeting another person where they are, and having the courage to become better, even when no one is watching.